Hi, Nick Smith here. I wanted to run through a couple of setup issues to do with the roadway module of Lighting Reality, although many of the features that are here are carried through into the outdoor module as well. I particularly wanted to look at some of the default settings. Firstly, customize report. In the report setup area, we can put information in here and here about our own organization, so that when we print reports, it comes out with our own information on. I would definitely urge people to do this. We have a lot of problems where people ring us up wanting lighting designs changing, and we have to explain to them that we prepare the software. So if I could urge you to look at this here, this area here, and you can also add your own logo. So I can add my own logo like so. Select save, and obviously I would change all the information here and here. And then when I print a report, you'll see that it's come with my own organisation's logo on. So the other things I wanted just to briefly touch on to do with setup issues. Set project path. This sets the location that Lighting Reality will save a project to initially when you select save, or will go to when you select open. You can set it to any drive that's connected to your computer, so you can set it to a network drive, a map drive, whatever it happens to be. Browse to that location, select apply, and then that will be done. The other area I wanted to particularly talk about was to do with default settings. Now, you will notice there are some similarities between the settings that appear in this dialog box and the settings that appear in this dialog box here. The default settings affect any future files. So when you go to the File menu and select New, you can set up any of these parameters to become the default options within your program, your within the settings of your Windows login. So obviously designer's name and the maintenance factor are important, or light loss factor, depending on whatever you happen to call it. I know everybody has a pet maintenance factor they like to use. I tend to use 0.79. That gives me an L80, an L90 value for the lumen depreciation, and it also gives me a certain cleaning style based on the philosophies we use within the UK in BS 5489. There's a couple of other areas that we need to look at here as well. If you use the IES grids RP8, you can set this up so that it works in meters or feet, or lux and foot candles, obviously using whatever of those you want. So I mean, when I'm doing stuff in America, I tend to use feet and lux because it allows me to get my head around it. But whatever combination of those you feel works for you, based on the units that you like to use. Drive on left, drive on right. In some of the grids, it has no bearing at all, but it's purely getting your head around what you do in your particular country. Obviously, in the UK, where I'm based, most of the time we drive on the left-hand side of the road. In fact, all of the time we drive on the left-hand side of the road. There's a few other options in here. The Dutch S class, that affects the some specific parameters to do with the EN13201 illuminance grid. For users in Holland, I would probably have that set as default. And the enable the Dutch ROVL, which again is something that applies to the EN13201 2015 grids. Again, for users in Holland, I would have those ticked as well. The French UL-Min thing, again for users in France, if you require a permanent longitudinal uniformity of 0.7, which disregards the values that appear in the European standard, then by ticking that, it will override 0.5, 0.6 longitudinal uniformity and automatically put in the 0.7. Disabled footpaths is associated with the luminance grids, and if you want to do an area and just specify a total area immaterial of the footpath, you can select that there. And linear interpolation, this is used for some of the earlier grids, particularly the EM13201 2013 grid, where there was an option in there to apply either linear or quadratic interpolation. Unless you know what you're doing, I would leave that alone. I have mine forced, so it sets EM13201 calculations. The Optimize 2 is quite a useful feature. It allows you to specify optimization to either meter or half meter intervals. Obviously, if you go to half meter intervals, you're doing twice as many calculations. But some people like that facility. Lastly, we have the selection of R tables, and in the UK we tend to use C2. I know in other territories R2 and R3 are used more extensively, particularly in North America, Canada, and various parts of Europe. The R2 and R3 are used. So select whichever one of those is appropriate for your country, for the designs that you're doing, and with mine set to C2. Similarly, if you do wet calculations, you can specify the W class that you want to use for calculations there. Obviously, this is a more advanced feature, so use those as necessary. Select Save, and any of those parameters that you've changed will then be saved and take effect in future versions. You can also set your default language here as well. So if you have installed the program in, say, English, because that's what you want, but you actually speak Dutch, German or French, then you can change the language to that, and that will mean the program will run in those languages within the program. When you actually come to print the reports, you can change the language to another language as well. Similarly, if you're for any of our colleagues that are in America or Canada particularly, most people tend to select English, thinking it's the right language to do. We have some facilities within the program which will force RP8 to become the default grid, and also it will also give you the option of the units that are available up here. So if you want to use feet and foot candles, it will allow those to become the default units within those standards. So if you change that here and then select Save, that will then become your default grid. I'm not going to do that in this case. So you select Save and Close, and that will then take effect. If you want to locally change any of the parameters within the current file, we can change that through these values here. So if you suddenly decide that you want to calculate to those two criterias there, then that will then affect the current file. Hope you have found this useful. If you have any comments or questions, please message me through YouTube. You can tweet me at nicksmith1246 through Twitter. You can send me an email to support@nicksmithassociates.com. And if you found this useful, please subscribe to the channel so any future updates that we publish will be notified to you. And finally, if you have a topic you want me to cover, please message me through YouTube, through LinkedIn. You can tweet me at nicksmith1246 or email me support@nicksmithassociates.com. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you found this useful.